Welcome to the CEC Gurukul lecture. In this lecture, I am going to talk about new reproductive technology and kinship. So, in continuation with the series of lectures in kinship studies, I am trying to look at how after 1980s, 90s, the emergence of large amount of new reproductive technology, also known as assisted reproductive technology, has kind of changed or has helped us in reimagining the kinship relations to kinship which was biological, kinship which was considered to be given, only to be understood in terms of genealogical blood ties, in terms of the genealogical tree, descent, etc., has kind of undergone change, and it also at the same time has kind of brought about change in the way we kind of understand motherhood, maternity, because reproductive technology is kind of affecting more of the women, and the kind of whole idea of the nature versus the culture debate is kind of reimagined or kind of understood from a different analysis to help us understand kinship relation. And in a way, it is also a kind of a contribution of feminist anthropologists who are trying to bring back the analysis of gender as a critical category for understanding kinship relations. So, with this, let us look into how the new reproductive technology has changed our notions of kinship. So, when we see that we kind of understand, and even when I was talking about reimagining family, we know that birth is not merely a biological event, even in the sense of even when we look at it from a traditional perspective in terms of as an act of procreation, we know there's a lot of anthropological literature which will talk about the entire process of the maternity or period of women, and how the personality of the individual depends on the lifestyle, on what the mother is eating, on the what time, and therefore there's a lot of prohibition, lot of taboos which kind of affect, and this is not something which is only to be kind of thought that it is in a traditional society. Even in modern society, in a very contemporary society, we know there are certain kind of many yoga classes, many lot of text literature which will tell you the ways of how pregnant women should behave. So, it is kind of an argument that we can accept that it is not merely a biological event, it is a social event, because it's kind of creating a relation and also kind of telling us that there is a kind of individual who is going to come in and is going to create a bond between the mother and the father. So, we know that birth itself cannot be considered as a biological process. So, as a consequence of reproductive technology, the boundaries between the biological and the social basis of kinship have become blurred. Earlier, it was very clear that it's a biological process, it's a certain period of maternity and then rebirth, and there's kind of a genetic changes that is happening place. But when we look into the reproductive technology, and today I am going to discuss the case study of Susan Martha Khan, who studied the fertility clinic in Israel, and we'll try to see how we cannot be able to differentiate who's a biological mother and who's a social mother. So, it kind of blurs the boundary between the biological and the social. So, reproductive technologies have challenged the cultural construction of kinships and brings about new kinds of social relation in which kinship boundaries are redefined. So, to repeat again, the boundaries or the ways in which we were trying to understand kinship was only with reference to the biological ties, or how we conceptualize maternity was only with relation to certain kind of biological process. But now we will see that when there is a kind of a machine or a secular relation which comes into intervention of reproduction, we have to kind of reimagine the family which is being constituted. To briefly tell you, there is a lot of literature from medical sciences on this, but from a social science perspective, we should kind of know what these processes are. So some of the new reproductive technology and some which have become very common has become a part of our life, and all over Delhi we can see a lot of new medical centers, medical hospitals having these facilities, because it's also linked to the political economy of the medical system in India. So the types of NRT is IVF. The full form is in vitro fertilization. In vitro fertilization, the eggs of the women are surgically removed from her body and are transferred into the system or the womb of another woman, and it is kind of the reproduction is possibility. Now this, if we look into, is that over the years why has IVF in a way increased in India, is also to kind of look into it from a social cultural perspective, where we see that lot of labeling has been done. So if a woman is not able to conceive a child, she is not kind of looked up in from a social angle, she is kind of labeled as an evil woman and not suitable. A very low status is assigned to women who don't have not able to deliver. So a lot of men also kind of go on kind of committing violence or ending the marriage and entering into another marriage, and that is the reason that the medical market has got hold of IVF. And if we go through 1 kilometer from here to say Gurgaon, we'll see a lot of advertisements saying that it is very easy to now become a mother. So that's is the possibility of becoming mother through the use of a technology, which has also led to change in which we try to understand kinship relation. The second is surrogacy. Now, there is a lot of literature, a lot of understanding of surrogacy, especially in the context of India. So, what is surrogacy? Surrogacy is basically when a woman's womb is rented to incubate and give birth to a baby for another couple. So, this is again very important when we look at from kinship perspective, that in a traditional approach it was kind of said that since the child gestation period of 9 months, it develops a bond, a biological, psychological bond with the women. Now this bond is not the same, because the mother is going to change. The surrogate is the woman who is renting her womb, is not the mother. The mother will be the one who can pay. So therefore there is a lot of ethical, monetary issues which is also concerned, and especially in the case of India, we see a lot of poor women are kind of renting their womb. The term has been used as renting, because you're going to kind of undergo the gestation period and then hand over the child to the person who is going to pay you. So how do we then look into the understanding of who is the mother? Is the mother who has given birth to the child, or it is the mother who has kind of bought the baby for a certain cost? So this is again a very important complex situation which leads to a redefinition of maternity and motherhood. We also have other techniques like sperm insemination, egg donation. So several technologies are there. But the concern of my lecture is not to look into what are the technologies. The concern is to try to problematize how technology has kind of entered into the domestic, social, cultural realm and has helped us to reimagine family and kinship. So it has actually changed the way we look into motherhood, the way we look into maternity, the way we look into the entire bond between the mother and the child. So earlier motherhood was seen as culturally and legally established through genetic kinship. Again, you know, this is again something which we kind of bring in from our everyday experience, and we hear a lot of things when the personality of the child depends on the genetic material or biogenetic substance. Now, how do we kind of figure it out that if the child is behaving in a certain manner or kind of having a certain behavior, the biological mother is no longer in picture. So it is very difficult actually to kind of ascribe a standard that it is the biological mother's behavior or the way she is kind of acting, doing, eating things that will determine the personality of the child that is in her womb. So that needs to be kind of questioned or re-examined. Today, reproductive technology have allowed for new legitimation of motherhood and thereby widening the scope of motherhood to include a wide range of possibilities that no longer rest on simple biological claim of traditional nuclear family. So, the whole idea of the nuclear family was the father, the mother and the son. Now, this mapping of the father, mother and the son or daughter kind of becomes problematic, because we have an extra member, the surrogate or the person who has donated the egg. But what is this? Is this the addition of the person is not actually visible. We don't know who it is, because even in surrogacy, once the surrogate has kind of given birth to the child, it legally is not allowed to have any relation with the child. So, so that is also an emotional dilemma that is kind of undergoing, that if earlier in a traditional kind of a setup where reproductive technology was not there, if a mother had given birth to a child and left the child, then again the society would label her as evil, or as that she is a kumata or a bad woman who is not even taking care of the child. Now, how do we conceptualize this, where the woman is forced to give up her child on monetary ground and is not supposed to maintain any kind of relation with the child that she is going to bring? So, therefore, what is basically from a kinship perspective it is doing is, it is questioning that what would be that nuclear family. In many Bollywood movies, if you we have seen that they kind of allow the surrogate to be with the family for some point of time, because that mother biological breastfeeding is required, and even the growth of the child is considered to be more positive. So, how do we then conceptualize the family? What term do we use to describe such a family is a kind of an challenge for the traditional anthropological approach. This challenges the normative family model. So, that is what I am saying, that what is a normal family? Is the normal family a father, the child and the children, or is the normal family where the surrogate is kind of a member of that family? So, it kind of destabilizes social understanding of motherhood, because the mother may involve an egg donor or a surrogate, or and this is again, we are just not talking about IVF and surrogacy. It kind of also extend to the whole idea that two men can have a kind of a child, and that would be very interesting to know that few years back a lot of media was kind of discussing that's a man who has become a mother, and that or had a baby, and that's possible because of the reproductive technology that is placed. That is, an artificial womb was created and inserted into the body of a male, and it was possible for the gestation to take place. So, that is what the theorization is saying, that reproduction need not necessarily be a biological act between a man and a woman. It could be between two men, it could be without the relation of marriage where we have surrogate. So, there could be also, we have read in newspapers and lot of discussion in media where women of above 70 years or something became a mother. That's again possible because now your biological body is kind of controlled by technology. It can let those hormones which are required for pregnancy inserted into the body through use of technology. So, we kind of not restrict ourselves to the understanding of family or to the understanding of motherhood to certain limits, and that is what the new reproductive technology has kind of done. So, the reproductive technology basically allows for the formation of families of choice. So, when we look into the families of choice, we try to understand that the new reproductive and therefore, we see a lot of same sex families having children, and then you also have a lot of men, and especially from the, if we take example from Bollywood, lot of men like Karan Johar and Tushar Kapoor became fathers, single parent, with the help of reproductive technology. So, then that also help us to understand the institution of marriage. How do we look into the function of marriage as leading to procreation of children? If you can become a father or you can become a mother using the reproductive technology, so you don't need a marital partner for such a role. So, then we try to understand that the maternity is no longer a biological phenomena. So it is no longer necessarily dependent on the ovum, and it's not necessarily the body of a woman. So that symbolic meaning that we are kind to attach to the maternity and ovum kind of changes. So dividing biological roles of motherhood into genetic eggs and gestation, these new technology force conceptual fragmentation of maternity. So we kind of earlier, if and that is what is the title of Martha Susan Khan's text, Eggs and Wombs. So earlier, eggs and womb was considered as one unit. So it was considered as part of the reproduction process. But what has reproductive technology done? It has divided the role of egg and the roles of womb. So the eggs could be of another body, and the womb could be of a different person. So the division between the eggs and the wombs kinds of tries to help us reconceptualize the institution of maternity and motherhood. So as soon as eggs are surgically removed from one's body and transferred into another's womb, reproductive possibilities are created. So that is a reason which we know, if we know infertility, which is a biological and a medical condition, but from a very commonsensical understanding, we know that the women cannot reproduce because of the body not being able to reproduce egg. So now this deficiency can be kind of taken care of, and that's what the IVF are kind of making so much of money. They have kind of understood this complexity, so they kind of extract eggs from one body and insert it into the woman who cannot produce her own egg, and then once it is inserted, the possibility of reproduction is possible. So we can then make sense of the advertisements which are saying that motherhood is now kind of easy and everybody can have the experience to be one. So now we go quickly to the case study, which is a case study done in Israel, and the reason why Israel has kind of taken in, because if we see, it has the highest number of fertility clinic than any part of the world. Most of the people who cannot kind of bear children go to Israel for the IVF surgical operation and kind of become parents. And if we look into Israel, here it is kind of the highest per capita rate of IVF procedures. It's earning a lot of money because of the IVF operation. So Susan Martha Khan does an ethnographic study of the fertility clinics in Israel. Now, besides the whole idea that Israel IVF is adding to the per capita income, what is very important to understand also is that it is a kind of the religion is very significant. So when we look into the article or we read the text of Susan Martha Khan, an important contribution is to try to see the interrelation between religion, politics and kinship. So the whole idea that which was given, that kinship is something which is only in the simple society and modern society are ruled by the state and by secular means, is also questioned, because in the case of Israel, the citizenship is entirely dependent on the maternity and it's also religiously regulated. So we will see how kinship can be can be a ground to understand citizenship and nationality in the case of Israel society. And if we look into the study, it was carried about in a Jewish hospital comprising of ultra-Orthodox Jews, Muslims, Christians. And if we look into the hospital where the surgery was going or the IVF operation was going, we see it as a mixed platform where you have very trained medical doctors who will be doing the surgery, but we also have in place religious leaders. We also have individuals who is going to monitor the entire process, and the entire process of the egg extraction and the insemination of the egg into the body of the women is religiously monitored to ensure that there is no intermixing. So in that, religious plays a dominant role in the reproduction of individual in the case of the Israel society. And also kind of religion is when we look into hospital, it's a secular place where modernity and science and technology is placed. But if we look into any hospital, in one corner of the hospital, even in India, we see there's a statue or a deity placed, and if a person is kind of suffering from some ailment which is difficult to control, or one has met with an accident, the statement that even the doctors say is that we've tried our best, now it depends on the Almighty. So that in a very commonsensical says that hospital is secular plus religious. But here in this case of Israel, we see that there is a lot of prayer books kept there in the cafeteria and the patient lounge. One. Two, that the entire procedure of the hospital is in consideration of the halakha law. The halakha is basically a rabbi's religious text, which rule which kind of regulates the Jewish community. So all the procedure are in consultation with the halakha rule. So therefore, it's a kind of mix of the secular and the religious. So ranging from the lab worker to the mascot, all were women. Now, the former showing traits of secular women and the later ultra-orthodox women. So all the technicians in the lab would be secular people, because they are not concerned about religion, those who are kind of doing the technical operation. But along with those, we also have massichots, or who are the religious people. They are there only to monitor the intermixing of the eggs and the sperm. That for instance, the eggs of the Jewish does not kind of mixes with non-Jewish. So that's what is very important in this ethnographic study. So the lab workers were women, and we see that it's a combination of a secular and religious people, but all women together over there are collectively taking part in the reproduction process. So again, we kind of see a little bit of shift. In a traditional society. It was kind of an individual experience, but here a collective experience is being shared. So the woman who is undergoing this is sharing her experience with the lab technicians, with the massachots who are there, and all this creates a common realm of conversation. So the talking, everyday conversation, sharing of pain, kind of feeling happy about certain things. So these sharing and caring, if we kind of look into it, can constitute a family, or can constitute the sharing of experience of a biological process. So the social practice of facilitating reproduction creates a bond between all those who are present in the hospital, between the doctor, the lab workers, the religious people, and the patient. So over the period of time that the woman is undergoing this surgery, she is able to create a network of kin relations with everybody else. So that tells us that kinship is not only biological. So the people who are there, who be the lab technicians and the other, the doctors or the secular people, they are not related to her by blood, they are not related by marriage, yet it establishes a kin network, and that's what is important to understand kinship from a social cultural perspective. So we see the development of culture of relatedness. Relations can thus be emerging outside one's final and biological ties. So that's what kind of saying that also if we look into the traditional way, or we look into reproduction outside of new reproductive technology, to a large extent it is an individual biological experience. So the woman is undergoing changes, she is kind of seeing change in her body, she is seeing change around her, and the best she can kind of share her experiences with her mother or with her husband. Now we see that it is kind of outside. People who are not related to marriage, who are not related through biology, are sharing your experience. So that is what we kind of mean by talking about kinship as fluid, kinship as processual. So relations can be social and fictive. Now this fictive kinship is kind of something which was given in by anthropologists to explain relations which did not fit into the biological model. Now this culture of relatedness is kind of giving visibility to all those relations, whether it be your friend, it could be the same sex family, or it could be people who are in the reproductive technology assisting the individual to become a mother. So that is the important contribution when we look into the new reproductive technology. So when we look into the new reproductive technology, what is also important is try to understand, and this is what I have already said, that who is the mother, who is the actual mother. The woman who donates the egg, which is the genetic mother, or what we call as a biological mother, or the woman who carries the child pregnancy following the traditional dictum that paternity is established at the conception and maternity at birth. So if we go by the traditional idea, maternity was established, a woman would be a mother who would deliver a baby. Now this whole idea of legitimacy of paternity and legitimacy of maternity, which Edmund Leach is talking about, the rights of marriage, is now questioned. And it also contradicts Nayer's, where the act of giving gift to kind of establish legitimacy to become a father. Here it is an unsolved problem. Who is actually the mother, or does the child kind of have two mothers? So it is kind of understood that it could lead to individual child having two mothers. But then again, if we go by the surrogacy, or even if we look into the IVF, the second mother is kind of not in the picture. So it is the social mother who then later on becomes a biological mother as well. So there could be different ways in which we can interpret this, but what is important is to understand that religious identity is determined by matrilineal, and positive Jewish identity renders citizenship. So now when we look into new reproductive technology and how it has kind of changed the way in which we look into maternity, motherhood, and even for that instance the understanding of family, we see that there is a lot of change and lot of water that has flowed from the inception of study of kinship in the 1960s, 70s to today. With this, I come to an end of my lecture. Thank you.